My husband got his assistant pregnant, then expected me to stay quiet and play happy family. He sneered, "You'll accept this baby or lose everything. You're too weak to leave me anyway." I said, "Not yet," and hired a forensic accountant instead. When the audit results came back, his whole family went silent. "You'll accept this baby or lose everything." My husband Garrett stands in our Buckhead penthouse living room, arms crossed, wearing that smirk I've grown to hate over 12 years of marriage. Behind him, his assistant Piper shifts uncomfortably, 6 months pregnant with his child. His mother Eleanor hovers nearby, holding a baby shower invitation she just handed me, cream cardstock announcing a celebration for my husband's mistress. "You're too weak to leave me anyway," Garrett adds, his voice dripping with the same arrogance he uses to crush competitors in boardrooms. The entire Harwick family has assembled for this intervention. His father Monroe by the bar swirling bourbon. His brother Trent on the sofa, barely hiding his amusement at my humiliation. They expect tears. Begging. Capitulation. Instead, I set down the invitation on our $8,000 glass coffee table and say 2 words that will detonate his entire world. "Not yet." The room goes silent. Garrett's smirk falters. "Before I agree to anything," I continue, my voice steadier than I've heard it in years, "I'm hiring a forensic accountant. Let's see what they find before we discuss my role in your happy family fantasy." I watch panic flicker across Garrett's face, and for the first time in 12 years, I realize I might actually have power in this marriage after all. My name is Sutton Harwick. I'm 41 years old. And this is the story of how I destroyed my husband's empire with 2 words and 1 very thorough audit. But to understand how we got here, to this moment where I finally stopped being the perfect wife and became something far more dangerous, you need to know what the past 12 years looked like. You need to understand the carefully constructed prison I've been living in, and how Garrett built it so slowly I didn't even notice the walls closing in until it was almost too late. I came to Atlanta from Charlotte 12 years ago with nothing but event planning skills and dreams of stability I'd never had growing up. My mother died when I was 23. Cancer that ate through our family's modest savings before it took her. My father remarried within a year to a woman who made it clear his old life, including his 2 daughters, wasn't part of her fresh start. He moved to Florida and stopped calling except on holidays, and even those calls felt obligatory, like checking items off a list. My younger sister Bryn went to college on loans and became an elementary school teacher in Asheville. We stayed close, talking every Sunday without fail, but she was barely surviving on a teacher's salary while I was working 12-hour days coordinating corporate events and high-end weddings for people who spent more on centerpieces than I made in a month. I met Garrett at one of those events, a charity gala where I was managing the silent auction. He was 33, handsome in that polished way wealthy men are when they've never missed a meal or worried about rent. He wore confidence like cologne, expensive and impossible to ignore. While I was directing catering staff and fixing seating chart disasters, he bid an obscene amount on a golf package and then asked me to dinner. The courtship was intense. Expensive restaurants where I mispronounced menu items and he found it charming instead of embarrassing. Weekend trips to Savannah and Charleston in hotels that overlooked water and history. Introductions to his family at their lake house in North Georgia. A sprawling property where the Harwick name meant something, where generations of real estate development money had built an empire that felt as permanent as the mountains surrounding the water. Eleanor was there that first weekend, watching me with sharp eyes that assessed my worth like an appraiser examining a potential acquisition. Monroe was quieter, content to let his wife conduct the social warfare while he discussed business with Garrett and Trent. I tried so hard to be impressive, to prove I belonged in their world even though my dress came from a department store and their casual weekend clothes cost more than my monthly rent. The proposal happened 8 months after we met. Garrett took me back to that lake house and led me down to the dock at sunset. His entire family watched from the deck above, Eleanor with champagne already in hand, Monroe nodding approval, Trent with his wife Shauna standing slightly apart from the celebration. I should have recognized it then for what it was. Not a private moment of love, but a public claiming. A performance for an audience that would always be watching, always judging, always reminding me that I'd married into something I could never truly belong to. The wedding was an Atlanta social event. 300 guests at the cathedral, reception at the Capital City Club, coverage in Southern Living magazine. I walked down that aisle in a dress Eleanor helped select, Not the one I'd loved, but the one she said was more appropriate for a Harwick bride. My father came, but his new wife didn't. Bryn was my maid of honor, and I remember her squeezing my hand before I walked down the aisle and whispering, "You can still change your mind." I laughed it off. What was I going to do? Leave the most stable thing that had ever happened to me because my sister had a bad feeling? The penthouse became my new reality. 40 floors above Atlanta, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a skyline I'd only ever seen from ground level. Furniture I didn't choose. Italian leather sofas Eleanor selected because they complemented the architectural integrity. A glass coffee table Garrett bought specifically because it cost $8,000 and he enjoyed telling people that exact number at dinner parties. Abstract art I didn't understand purchased by an interior designer Eleanor hired without asking my opinion. I stopped working 3 months after the wedding. Garrett suggested it casually over breakfast one morning. "You don't need to coordinate other people's events anymore," he said. "You can focus on our life now." Felt like freedom at first. No more 12-hour days on my feet. No more bridezillas screaming about wrong napkin colors. No more carrying equipment to venues in the summer heat. But freedom without purpose is just empty time. And empty time in a penthouse filled with other people's choices is its own kind of prison. My mornings developed a rhythm. Wake at 6. Prepare Garrett's coffee exactly how Eleanor taught me. Specific beans from a boutique roaster in Midtown, precise water temperature, poured into the cup he preferred. Lay out his suit while he showered. Smile when he left for Harwick Consolidated Holdings, where his family's real estate empire ran with mechanical precision. Then I'd have the rest of the day to fill. At first I joined committees Eleanor suggested. Charity boards where wealthy women planned galas similar to the ones I used to coordinate, except now I sat on the other side of the planning, offering opinions about things I used to execute professionally. I attended luncheons at the country club where conversations revolved around vacation homes and private schools and which families were rising or falling in Atlanta's social hierarchy. I hosted dinner parties for Garrett's business associates. Sat at tables laden with food I once would have prepared or served, wearing designer dresses that cost more than I used to make in a week, making conversation about nothing while men discussed real estate development and women discussed interior designers. I learned to navigate Eleanor's world. The right stores, the right restaurants, the right charities, the right everything. And slowly, so slowly I didn't notice it happening, I disappeared. The first sign came 3 years into the marriage. I was organizing Garrett's home office for tax season, a task Eleanor had suggested would be helpful since I wasn't working, when I found a folder marked Personal, Confidential misfiled in the cabinet. Inside were medical records dated 6 months after our wedding. One procedure. Vasectomy. Successful. Follow-up confirmed 0 sperm count. I stood in that office holding those papers while Atlanta sprawled below our windows, and something inside me broke and hardened simultaneously. Garrett had surgically ensured we'd never have children, then spent 3 years letting his mother blame me for being childless. When I confronted him that evening, he didn't apologize. Didn't pretend guilt or remorse. He looked at me across our expensive dining table and said with complete calm, "I don't want kids. Never did. But mother would make my life hell if I told her the truth, so it's easier if she blames you." That was 9 years ago. I absorbed that betrayal silently. Where could I go? My event planning skills were 3 years stale. My professional contacts had moved on. My savings were gone, absorbed into joint accounts that somehow became just his accounts. My father was in Florida living his new life. Bryn was barely surviving on a teacher's salary in Asheville. So I let Eleanor continue her campaign. Every family dinner included pointed questions about why we hadn't given her grandchildren yet. Suggestions about fertility specialists. Comments about how Trent's wife Shauna had no trouble conceiving and already had 2 children who would inherit the Harwick legacy if I continued failing at my most basic biological function. The women at Eleanor's country club whispered when I walked by. I could feel their pity and judgment pressing against my skin like summer humidity. They smiled with careful sympathy while their eyes assessed whether I was truly broken or just selfish, whether Garrett might eventually leave me for someone more suitable. Eleanor introduced him to younger women at company events with comments about keeping options open. She scheduled appointments with fertility specialists and handed me the information at family dinners. The shame became part of my identity. Another weight I carried alongside designer handbags and fake smiles and the growing certainty that I'd trapped myself in a marriage I couldn't escape. 3 years ago, the financial isolation began in earnest. The joint credit cards I'd used for groceries and personal expenses suddenly maxed out. When I asked Garrett about it over breakfast, he barely looked up from his phone. Companies reorganizing cash flow. Use the household account from now on. That account held exactly $3,000 monthly. Enough for groceries and gas. Not enough to save. Not enough to leave. Not enough to ever feel independent. Our vacation home in Highlands, the one place I'd actually loved, where mountain air made me feel like I could breathe, was quietly transferred into a Harwick family trust where my name held no legal weight. Investment accounts became inaccessible when passwords changed. Bills stopped coming to our address and started going to Garrett's office. Every asset slowly moved beyond my reach while I smiled at charity luncheons and pretended everything was perfect. I started feeling like a guest in my own life. Someone who could be evicted at any moment with nowhere to go and no resources to land on. 6 months ago, Garrett hired Piper Caldwell as his new executive assistant. 26 years old, fresh from graduate school, bright-eyed in that way people are before Atlanta's corporate world teaches them how power actually works. I met her at a company event. One of those hotel ballroom affairs with past appetizers and networking that felt more like warfare. He seemed sweet, eager, laughing at Garrett's jokes while balancing a wine glass she barely touched. Eleanor said Garrett needed attractive assistants to keep his workspace aesthetically pleasing. Another comment that should have been a red flag, but I'd trained myself to ignore red flags the way you train yourself to ignore chronic pain. Then Piper started appearing in places Garrett claimed to be going alone. Business dinners that ran past midnight. Weekend emergency meetings. His phone buzzing late at night with messages from PC that he'd check in the bathroom. 3 months ago, I saw them at a restaurant in Virginia Highland. Pure accident. I was picking up takeout and there they were, tucked into a corner table, her hand covering his, both laughing with the intimacy of people who'd crossed professional boundaries long ago. They didn't see me. I left before they could. I didn't confront him. Instead, I started documenting everything. Photographing statements before they disappeared. Recording dates and times. Building evidence while pretending nothing had changed. 2 weeks ago, Piper showed up to a board meeting visibly pregnant. 6 months along. The family erupted in celebration. Eleanor thrilled, Monroe proud, Trent amused. No one looked at me. Now they're all here in my living room, expecting me to accept this with grace and discretion. Expecting me to attend baby showers and smile while my husband parades his pregnant mistress through family events. They think I'm too weak to leave because I have $3,000 a month and nowhere to go. What they don't know is that my grandmother left me $15,000 4 years ago. Money in an old account Garrett never knew existed. And what Garrett doesn't know is that 12 years married to a CFO taught me something useful. I know when numbers don't add up. His numbers haven't added up in a long time. Eleanor's hand freezes mid-gesture when I say those 2 words. Her diamond tennis bracelet catches the afternoon light streaming through our floor-to-ceiling windows, suspended in the air like everything else in this room has suddenly stopped moving. Not yet what? Garrett demands, his smirk faltering for the first time since this intervention began. Not yet to all of it, I reply, keeping my voice level despite my heart hammering against my ribs. Before I agree to anything, I'm hiring a forensic accountant. Let's see what they find before we discuss my role in your happy family fantasy. The silence that crashes down is absolute. Monroe's bourbon glass stops halfway to his lips. Trent sits up straight on the sofa, his amusement evaporating into something approaching alarm. Behind Garrett, Piper's hand moves protectively to her pregnant belly, her eyes widening as she realizes this script isn't going the way anyone planned. You're being hysterical, Garrett tries, but his voice lacks its usual confidence. There's an edge to it now, something sharp and panicked underneath the dismissiveness. Actually, I'm being practical, I say, looking directly at him. 12 years married to a CFO should have taught me something. I know how to read between lines, Garrett. I know when numbers don't add up. And your numbers haven't added up in quite some time. Eleanor finds her voice first, of course. He always does. Sutton, this is absurd. You're upset, which is understandable, but making wild accusations about finances. I'm not making accusations, I interrupt, turning to face her. I'm requesting verification. If everything is as transparent as Garrett claims, then an audit will confirm it. What's the problem? The problem, Garrett says, his voice hardening, is that you're embarrassing yourself and this family with paranoid delusions. There's nothing to find because there's nothing hidden. I pick up the baby shower invitation from where I set it on the coffee table. The cream cardstock feels expensive between my fingers, just like everything else in this world the Harwicks have built. Then you have nothing to worry about, I say. The accountant will confirm that you'll be vindicated and we can all move forward with whatever arrangement you've already decided I'm going to accept. I walk toward the penthouse door, my heels clicking against the hardwood floors that suddenly feel less like home and more like a stage I'm finally leaving. Where are you going? Eleanor's voice rises with an edge of panic that's unfamiliar coming from her. We're not finished here. I am, I say without turning around. I'll be at my sister's place. When the forensic accountant has preliminary findings, we can schedule another family meeting. Until then, I don't think we have anything else to discuss. Behind me, I hear Garrett trying to explain to his family that I'm overreacting, that there's nothing to find, that I'm just hurt and lashing out. But his voice carries that fear now, unmistakable to anyone paying attention. Monroe says something I can't quite hear. Trent mutters what sounds like a curse. Eleanor's voice rises in sharp questions I don't stay to answer. I walk out of the penthouse, pull the door closed behind me and stand in the hallway waiting for the elevator. My hands are shaking now that I'm alone. The adrenaline that carried me through that confrontation is starting to fade, replaced by the terrifying reality of what I just did. The elevator arrives. I step inside and watch the numbers descend. 40 floors back to ground level. Back to the real world where people don't live in penthouses and don't accept their husbands' pregnant mistresses with grace and discretion. My phone starts buzzing before I reach the parking garage. Garrett calling. I silence it. Then Eleanor. Then a number I don't recognize that's probably Trent. I silence them all and drive toward Decatur where Bryn lives in a one-bedroom apartment that costs less per month than Garrett spends on his car payment. The drive takes 30 minutes in Atlanta traffic. My phone keeps buzzing. Text messages piling up that I don't read. Voicemails I don't listen to. By the time I pull into Bryn's apartment complex, I have 17 missed calls and God knows how many messages. I sit in my car for a moment in the parking lot, watching families come and go from the building. Normal people with normal lives. A woman carrying groceries. A man walking a dog. A couple arguing about something mundane while their kid trails behind them on a scooter. Nobody living 40 floors above reality. Nobody attending baby showers for their husband's pregnant assistant. My phone buzzes again. This time it's Bryn. Are you okay? Eleanor just called me, which is terrifying because she's never called me in 12 years. What happened? I text back. I'm in your parking lot. Can I come up? Her response is immediate. Doors unlocked. I'm making tea. Bryn's apartment is small but comfortable in ways the penthouse never was. Furniture she actually chose. Books stacked on shelves she assembled herself. Photos on the walls of people she loves rather than abstract art purchased by interior designers. She opens the door before I can knock, takes one look at my face and pulls me inside without asking questions. Sit, she says, guiding me to her second-hand couch that's more comfortable than our $8,000 Italian leather sofa. I'm making real tea, not whatever fancy loose-leaf situation Eleanor probably serves. I sink into the cushions and feel something inside me finally break. Not dramatically. Not with huge sobs or hysterics. Just a quiet cracking like ice that's been solid for 12 years finally starting to melt. Eleanor called you? I ask when I can speak. 3 times, Bryn says from her tiny kitchen. Left increasingly frantic voicemails about you having some kind of breakdown and making wild accusations and how I need to talk sense into you as your sister. She appears in the doorway holding 2 mugs. So naturally, I need to hear your version of what happened. I tell her everything. The confrontation. The baby shower invitation. Garrett's smirk and Eleanor's expectations and the entire family assembled like a tribunal designed to break me into compliance. Piper standing there pregnant while they explained how I was supposed to accept this situation with maturity and grace. And then I said I was hiring a forensic accountant. I finish. Just said it. Didn't plan it. The words just came out. Bryn is quiet for a long moment, steam rising from her mug. Then she starts laughing. Not mockingly, with genuine delight. What? I ask. You, she says. You just, God, I wish I'd been there to see their faces. Eleanor must have lost her mind. She tried to tell me I was being hysterical. Of course she did. That's her move. Make you feel crazy for noticing things that are actually happening. Bryn sets down her mug and looks at me seriously. But Sutton, are you actually going to hire someone? Or was that just a power move to get out of the room? I think about that question. About the $15,000 from my grandmother that Garrett doesn't know exists. About 12 years of watching assets move beyond my reach. About medical records that proved Garrett lied about the vasectomy. About $3,000 a month that's kept me trapped. I'm going to hire someone, I say. I already have a name. Maya, remember her from my event planning days? She went through a divorce last year. Told me about a forensic accountant who found millions her husband claimed didn't exist. Bryn pulls out her phone. What's the name? Deirdre Vaughn. She's already typing, pulling up information. She's expensive. Really expensive. Her retainer alone is probably $15,000, I say. I have it. Grandmother's inheritance. Bryn looks up sharply. Garrett doesn't know about that money? It came 4 years ago after we were married. I deposited it in my old account from before the wedding. Never told him about it. Just kept it there like a secret I didn't know I'd need. That's the smartest thing you've ever done, Bryn says. Hey, we're calling her right now. Now. It's almost 5 o'clock. You just told the Harwick family you were hiring a forensic accountant. Garrett's going to spend tonight either hiding evidence or calling his own lawyers or both. You need to move fast. He's right. I know she's right. My phone is still buzzing with calls and texts I'm ignoring. Garrett trying to control the narrative. Eleanor trying to smooth everything over. The family machine already working to contain this situation before it becomes something they can't manage. Bryn finds Deirdre Vaughn's office number and hands me her phone. Cool. The worst she can say is her office is closed and you'll have to wait until tomorrow. I take the phone. My hand is shaking slightly as I dial. It rings 3 times before someone answers. Deirdre Vaughn's office. Hi, my name is Sutton Harwick. I need to speak with Ms. Vaughn about hiring her. It's urgent. There's a pause. Ms. Vaughn's office hours end at 5, but if you can hold for a moment, I'll check if she's still available. Classical music plays while I wait. Bryn watches me with an expression I can't quite read. Part concern, part pride, part fear for what I'm setting in motion. The music stops. A woman's voice comes on the line, older and direct. This is Deirdre Vaughn. My assistant says you need to speak with me urgently. What's going on? I take a breath. My husband is CFO of his family's real estate company. He's having an affair with his assistant who's pregnant with his child. His family just informed me I'm expected to accept this situation. And I think he's been hiding money. A lot of it. For years. Another pause. Then, how soon can you come in? Tomorrow morning? I have an 8 a.m. opening. Bring every financial document you can access. Bank statements, tax returns, investment accounts, property deeds. Anything with his signature. Can you do that? Yes. Good. And Miss Harwick? Don't tell your husband you're hiring me. Don't tell his family. Don't tell anyone except people you absolutely trust. The element of surprise is your biggest advantage right now. Understood. See you at 8. He hangs up. I hand Bryn her phone back and sit in silence for a moment, processing what I just did. You're staying here tonight, Bryn says. It's not a question. I'll take the couch. You get the bed. Tomorrow morning we'll go to the penthouse when Garrett's at work and get whatever documents you need. My phone buzzes again. Another call from Garrett. I silence it without looking. Thank you, I say quietly. Don't thank me yet, Bryn replies. This is about to get really ugly. The Harwicks don't lose gracefully. You know that, right? I think about Eleanor's frozen expression. Monroe's stopped glass. The panic in Garrett's voice when he tried to dismiss my threat. I know, I say. But I don't think I can keep being weak. You were never weak, Bryn says firmly. You survived 12 years with those people. That takes strength most people don't have. You're just finally using that strength for yourself instead of them. Outside, the sun is setting over Decatur. Normal people in a normal neighborhood doing normal things. In a few hours I'll try to sleep in my sister's bed while my phone continues buzzing with messages from a family that expected compliance and got rebellion instead. Tomorrow morning, I'll walk into Deirdre Vaughn's office and find out if Garrett's panic was justified. Something tells me it was. I don't sleep that night at Bryn's apartment. I lie in her bed staring at the ceiling while she snores softly on the couch in the next room, and I replay the confrontation over and over in my mind. Eleanor's frozen hand. Monroe's stopped glass. The panic flickering across Garrett's face when I mentioned a forensic accountant. That panic told me everything I needed to know. At 6 a.m. I give up on sleep and find Bryn already awake in her tiny kitchen, making coffee in a French press that probably cost $20 compared to the $200 espresso machine sitting in our penthouse. "You look terrible," she says without preamble. "I feel terrible." "Good. That means you're taking this seriously." She pours coffee into mismatched mugs. "We need to get to the penthouse before Garrett leaves for work. You need documents for your 8 o'clock meeting with Deirdre." The thought of going back there makes my stomach turn. What if he's still home? "Then you tell him you came back to get some clothes. You're staying with me for a few days while you cool off." That's reasonable, right? That's what the perfect wife would do after an emotional confrontation. Take a little space, calm down, come back ready to be compliant. He's right. Playing the role one more time might be exactly what I need to do. We drive separately to Buckhead. Bryn parks on the street while I use the garage, maintaining the appearance of normalcy in case anyone's watching. The elevator ride to the 40th floor feels longer than usual. My key still works in the penthouse door. Of course it does, because why would Garrett think to change the locks on a wife he believes is too weak to leave? The apartment is silent. Garrett's already gone to Harwick Holdings, probably arriving early to do damage control with his family after yesterday's disaster. I stand in the entryway for a moment, looking at the expensive furniture I never chose, the art I never liked, the life I built that never actually belonged to me. Then I get to work. Garrett's home office is at the end of the hallway, a room with a view of Atlanta's skyline and a door he usually keeps locked. But I know where he hides the key, taped under his desk drawer, because he's arrogant enough to think I'd never look. The lock clicks open and I'm inside, surrounded by filing cabinets and a massive desk and walls of books he's never read but keeps for appearance. I start with the filing cabinets. Tax returns going back 10 years. Bank statements from accounts I didn't know existed. Investment portfolio summaries with numbers that make my hands shake. Property deeds for real estate I've never heard of. Corporate documents from Harwick Holdings with Garrett's signature scattered across pages of financial transactions I don't fully understand but photograph anyway with my phone. My phone buzzes. A text from Bryn. "You okay up there?" "Fine. Found a lot." "How much longer?" 20 minutes. I move to Garrett's computer. It's password protected, but I know his passwords. He uses the same rotation of 4 combinations for everything because he thinks he's too smart to forget them. The third one works. His desktop appears, organized into folders with names like Personal Finance, and HH Corporate, and Property Development. I plug in the USB drive Bryn gave me and start copying files. Everything I can find. Spreadsheets and PDFs and scanned documents. The progress bar moves with agonizing slowness while I stand there waiting, listening for any sound that might mean Garrett came back unexpectedly. The computer desk has drawers. I open them systematically. Office supplies. Old phones. Charging cables. Then in the bottom drawer, a folder marked Personal, Confidential. My hands freeze on the folder. This is where I found the vasectomy records 9 years ago. What else has he been hiding in here? Inside are more medical records. But not for a vasectomy this time, for a vasectomy reversal. Dated 2 years ago. The procedure that would allow him to have children again, performed at a private clinic in Miami where no one in Atlanta would see him. Where I would never know. 2 years ago. Right around the time he started becoming more distant. Right before the financial isolation intensified. Right before he started systematically moving every asset beyond my reach. He planned this. All of it. Got the reversal, found Piper, got her pregnant, and set everything up so that when he was ready to replace me I'd have nothing. No money. No resources. No way to fight back. I photograph every page of those medical records with shaking hands. The USB drive finishes copying. I eject it, shut down the computer, return everything to exactly how I found it. Lock the office door behind me. Walk through the penthouse one more time, grabbing a few days' worth of clothes and toiletries so it looks like I'm just taking space, not permanently leaving. Bryn is waiting in her car on the street when I emerge from the building. I slide into the passenger seat and hand her the USB drive like I'm passing classified intelligence. Got it, I say. Everything. Everything I could find. And Bryn, he planned this. The whole thing. He got a vasectomy reversal 2 years ago and never told me. Her expression darkens. That son of a... I know. He starts the car. Deirdre's office is downtown. We have 45 minutes to get there in Atlanta traffic. Tell me you have coffee in that fancy penthouse. I do. But yours tasted better this morning. The drive downtown takes exactly 45 minutes through morning rush hour. Bryn drops me at the address Maya texted. A modest office building in a business district that's nowhere near as flashy as the glass towers where Garrett's family operates. This is where actual work happens, not where people go to impress clients with expensive architecture. Deirdre Vaughn's office is on the 3rd floor. The reception area is functional. Comfortable chairs, neutral walls, a desk where a young woman greets me with professional warmth. Sutton Harwick for 8 o'clock? Ms. Vaughn is ready for you. Go right in. The door opens to a corner office with windows overlooking the street below. Deirdre stands from behind her desk. Mid-50s, steel gray hair cut short, sharp eyes that assess me in seconds. She's wearing a blazer that's professional without being expensive, and there's something about her presence that makes me feel both nervous and safe simultaneously. Miss Harwick, she says, extending her hand. Her grip is firm. Have a seat. Can I get you coffee? Water. Coffee would be great. She pours from a carafe on the credenza, hands me a mug and settles back behind her desk with a legal pad and recorder. Before we begin, I want to be clear about what I do and what this costs. My retainer is $15,000. That covers initial investigation and evidence gathering. If we find fraud, and based on what you told me on the phone, I suspect we will, additional fees will apply as the scope expands. My hourly rate is $500. A full forensic audit on someone with your husband's financial complexity could run anywhere from $30,000 to $75,000 total depending on what we uncover. Are you prepared for that? The numbers make my stomach drop. But I think about the medical records I just found. About 12 years of systematic isolation. About Garrett's panic yesterday when I mentioned an accountant. I have the $15,000 for the retainer, I say. If we find fraud, can those additional costs come from recovered assets? Deirdre smiles slightly. That's usually how it works, yes. We find hidden money, you get it back, you pay me from that. But I need you to understand something up front. This is going to get ugly. Your husband will fight back. His family will close ranks. They'll claim you're lying, that I'm fabricating evidence, that you're just a scorned wife out for revenge. Can you handle that? I think about Eleanor's voice on the phone yesterday. About Monroe's silence. About sitting in that living room while they explained how I was supposed to accept humiliation with grace. Yes, I say. I can handle that. Good. She clicks the recorder on. Now walk me through everything. Start with when you got married and work forward chronologically. Every financial change. Every account that became inaccessible. Every asset that moved. Every suspicion you had but dismissed. I need all of it. For the next 3 hours, I detail 12 years of marriage. The joint credit cards that maxed out. The household allowance of $3,000 monthly. The vacation home transferred to a family trust. Investment accounts with changed passwords. Bills redirected to Garrett's office. The way every asset slowly moved beyond my legal reach while I smiled at charity events and played the perfect wife. Deirdre takes notes in shorthand I can't read, occasionally stopping me to ask specific questions. What month did that happen? Whose name was on the deed? Did you sign anything? Do you have documentation? When I get to the part about the vasectomy, her pen stops moving. He got a vasectomy 3 years into your marriage without telling you, let his mother blame you for being childless, then got it reversed 2 years ago, again without telling you, and immediately started an affair that resulted in pregnancy? Yes. She sits back in her chair. That's not just financial abuse, Ms. Harwick. That's psychological torture designed to destroy your sense of reality and self-worth while systematically stripping away any resources you might use to escape. Hearing someone name it, hearing a professional with no connection to my life or Garrett's family state it plainly, makes something crack open inside my chest. I have the medical records, I say, my voice barely steady. Both procedures. I photographed them this morning. Good. Send those to me. Everything you photographed, actually, I need to see all of it. She leans forward. Ms. Harwick, Sutton, I'm going to be very direct with you. Based on what you've told me, I believe your husband has been engaged in systematic financial abuse for years. But I also think there's more here. The pattern you're describing, assets moving, accounts becoming inaccessible, his position as CFO of a family company, it smells like fraud beyond just your marriage. Men who steal from their wives often steal from other places too. My phone buzzes in my purse. I ignore it. It's been buzzing all morning. Garrett, Eleanor, numbers I don't recognize. All of them trying to reach me to control the narrative, to smooth this over before it becomes something they can't manage. What do you need from me? I ask. Full authorization to pull financial records. Bank accounts, credit reports, corporate filings, property records. Everything. And I need you to maintain appearances as much as possible. Go home. Be visible. Act like you're considering their proposal. The longer your husband thinks you're still controllable, the longer he'll leave evidence sitting where I can find it. The thought of going back to that penthouse, of pretending everything is fine, makes my stomach turn. But I understand the strategy. How long will this take? Preliminary findings? 2 weeks. Full audit? 6 to 8 weeks depending on complexity. She pauses. But Sutton, I want you to prepare yourself. If I find what I think I'm going to find, this won't just destroy your marriage. It could destroy his career, his family's company, possibly land him in prison. Are you ready for that level of consequence? I think about the baby shower invitation. About Eleanor's glee. About Garrett's smirk when he told me I was too weak to leave. About 12 years of being made to feel small and broken and insufficient. Yes, I say. I'm ready. I sign the authorization forms in Deirdre's office, my signature looking shakier than I'd like on the legal documents that will give her access to everything. Bank records. Credit reports. Corporate filings. Property deeds. Every financial thread of Garrett's life that she can legally pull. 2 weeks for preliminary findings, Deirdre says as I stand to leave. Maybe sooner if what I suspect is there. Keep your phone on. And Sutton, be careful going home. Don't let on that anything's changed. The drive back to Buckhead feels surreal. I'm heading back to the penthouse to play the role of the compliant wife while a forensic accountant I just paid $15,000 tears apart my husband's financial life looking for fraud. The cognitive dissonance makes my head hurt. Garrett's car isn't in the garage when I arrive. Good. I have time to compose myself, to get my face ready for whatever performance tonight requires. The next 4 weeks are the strangest of my life. I move through the penthouse like an actress who's learned her lines so well she can deliver them on autopilot. Garrett comes home from work and I ask about his day. Eleanor calls about baby shower details and I offer opinions on color schemes. I attend a charity luncheon where women I barely know ask if I'm okay because they've heard rumors about stress in the marriage, and I smile and say everything's fine, just fine. At night, when Garrett's asleep in our bedroom and I'm in the guest room with my claimed insomnia, I lie awake wondering what Deirdre is finding. My phone stays on the nightstand, volume low but not silent, waiting for the call that will change everything. Garrett starts being nicer to me. It's subtle at first, asking if I need anything when he goes to the store, suggesting we have dinner at my favorite restaurant, buying flowers on a random Friday. He probably thinks his intimidation worked, that I've fallen back into line like I always do, that the threat of losing everything scared me into compliance. I'm glad you're being reasonable about all this, he says one evening over dinner at a steakhouse in Buckhead. We're sitting in a booth with leather seats that probably cost more than most people's monthly car payments, and he's reaching across the table for my hand like we're a couple in love instead of a fraud and his victim. I let him hold my hand. Smile. Say nothing about the forensic accountant systematically documenting every financial crime he's committed for the past 8 years. Eleanor calls me on a Tuesday afternoon 3 weeks into the investigation. Sutton, darling, I wanted to apologize for how tense things got at the family meeting. We were all surprised by your reaction, but I understand now that you were just processing difficult news. The important thing is that we move forward as a family, yes. It's the closest thing to an apology Eleanor Harwick has probably ever offered anyone. And it's not even really an apology. It's a strategic repositioning now that she thinks I've been brought to heel. Yes, I say. Moving forward is important. Wonderful. The baby shower is in 6 weeks. I've been working with the event coordinator at the club, but I'd love your input on some of the finer details. You always had such an eye for these things. She wants me to help plan the baby shower for my husband's pregnant mistress. The audacity is breathtaking. I'd be happy to help, I say, and somewhere deep in my chest, something that used to be capable of feeling shock or pain or humiliation just goes numb and cold. Bryn calls me every other day. How are you holding up? I'm fine. You're lying. Yes. Have you heard from Deirdre? Not yet. She said 2 weeks minimum, maybe 4. Sutton, if this gets to be too much. It won't. But it does. It is. Every day of pretending is another small death of whatever dignity I have left. Every smile I force, every polite response to Eleanor's texts, every night I lie in the guest room waiting for my phone to ring, it all accumulates into a weight that's crushing me from the inside out. 4 weeks and 3 days after I signed those authorization forms, my phone finally rings at 2 in the afternoon. I'm alone in the penthouse, standing at the floor-to-ceiling windows staring at Atlanta's skyline like I've done 1,000 times before. Deirdre's name flashes on my screen. My hands are shaking when I answer. Hello. Sutton. Her voice is different than it was in our first meeting. Harder. Angrier. You need to sit down for this. I sink onto the Italian leather sofa I've never liked, phone pressed against my ear so hard it hurts. What did you find? Everything, she says. I found everything. And Sutton, it's worse than I thought. Your husband hasn't just been transferring your marital assets beyond your reach. He's been embezzling from Harwick Consolidated Holdings itself. The room tilts slightly. Or maybe I tilt. It's hard to tell the difference. How much? I ask. From you? At least $7.3 million in hidden marital assets. Money that should be joint property, but he's moved into accounts and shell companies you have no access to. She pauses. From his family's company? Approximately $12.8 million over 8 years. I can't speak. Can't process numbers that large. Can't comprehend the scope of what she's telling me. He created a network of fake vendors, Deirdre continues, her voice clipped and professional like she's reading from a report. Construction companies. Property management services. Maintenance firms. All registered to addresses that turned out to be vacant lots or mail forwarding services in Delaware and Wyoming. Harwick Holdings would cut checks to these vendors for services that were never actually rendered. The money would flow through various accounts, some domestic, some offshore, before eventually landing in places your husband controls. How did no one notice? I ask. Because he's the CFO. He controls the books. He approves the payments. And he's been careful to keep individual transactions small enough that they don't trigger automatic audits. A few thousand here, 10,000 there. Over 8 years it adds up to millions, but month to month it just looks like normal business expenses. My mind is racing trying to keep up. What about real estate? You mentioned inflated property values. That was the clever part, Deirdre says, and there's grudging professional respect in her voice even as she's describing fraud. He'd arrange for Harwick Holdings to purchase a property, say a commercial building for $2 million. But in the company books, it would be recorded at $2.8 million. The difference would be justified through inflated appraisals from appraisers who were probably getting kickbacks. That extra $800,000 would disappear into accounts your husband controlled. And over 8 years. Exactly. Dozens of properties. Hundreds of thousands here, $1 million there. It accumulates fast. I think about Monroe's pride in the company his father built. About Eleanor's obsession with the Harwick legacy. About family dinners where they'd discuss real estate development like it was a sacred calling passed down through generations. They don't know, I say. Monroe and Eleanor. They have no idea. No, Deirdre confirms. Based on everything I've found, your husband has been operating completely independently. The fraud is sophisticated enough that it wouldn't show up in standard audits. You'd need someone specifically looking for it to find it. Someone like you. Someone exactly like me. There's a pause. I can hear her breathing on the other end of the line, waiting for me to process this. There's more, she says finally. About Piper Caldwell. My stomach clenches. What about her? Her name appears on corporate documents establishing her as partial owner of several shell companies your husband created. The ones being used to funnel money out of Harwick Holdings. I stand up from the sofa, pacing toward the windows. Why would he put her name on documents? Two possibilities, Deirdre says. Either she's complicit, she knew what she was signing and was actively participating in the fraud. Or your husband manipulated her into signing paperwork she didn't understand. Young assistant fresh from graduate school, her boss hands her documents and says, "Just sign here," standard corporate formality. She trusts him and signs without reading carefully. Which do you think it is? Honestly, I don't know. And legally it doesn't matter. Her signature is on those documents. That makes her liable regardless of whether she knew what she was signing. I think about Piper at the family intervention, her hand on her pregnant belly, her eyes on the floor. She'd looked uncomfortable. Trapped. But was that because she knew about the fraud and felt guilty? Or because she was realizing she'd been used by a man who'd already destroyed one woman and was clearly capable of destroying another? If she didn't know, can she prove it? I ask. That's her problem to solve, Deirdre says bluntly. She'll need her own attorney. She'll be fighting for years to clear her name if she wasn't actually involved. But Sutton, I need you to focus on your situation right now. We have documented evidence of systematic financial abuse spanning your entire marriage. We have proof of embezzlement from a corporate entity. We have tax evasion. Your husband hasn't been reporting this income to the IRS. We have wire fraud, money laundering, and about 6 other federal crimes I can think of off the top of my head. My legs feel weak. I sit back down on the sofa. What do I do with this? There's a long pause. When Deirdre speaks again, her voice is careful. Measured. That depends, Sutton. What do you want? I don't understand. Do you want a divorce settlement? Or do you want justice? The question hangs in the air between us. I can hear the difference in those two options. The weight of what she's really asking. Explain the difference, I say. A divorce settlement means we use this information as leverage. We go to Garrett's attorney, or he gets one if he doesn't have one yet, and we say, here's what we found, here's what we can prove. Now let's negotiate a settlement that gives you everything you're entitled to plus damages for financial abuse. You walk away with money. He walks away with his freedom and whatever's left of his assets after paying you. The family might never know the full extent. It stays relatively private. And justice. Justice means we report this. I prepare 3 copies of my full forensic report. 147 pages of documented fraud. One goes to Garrett's attorney. One goes to Monroe Harwick's corporate counsel, because he's legally obligated to know about embezzlement from his company. And one goes to the IRS fraud division. She pauses. That option destroys him, Sutton. His family will know everything. Law enforcement will investigate. This becomes public record eventually. He'll face federal charges. Prison time. But you'll still get your settlement. Probably more actually, because the prenup becomes completely unenforceable given the systematic fraud. I think about 12 years of being made to feel small and broken and insufficient. About the allowance system that kept me dependent. About the blame for childlessness I didn't cause. About Eleanor's smug satisfaction planning a baby shower for my husband's mistress. About Garrett's sneer when he told me I was too weak to leave. About the vasectomy reversal he got without telling me. About the medical records proving he'd planned this replacement for years. I want both, I say. I want the settlement and I want justice. Deirdre's voice changes, satisfaction mixed with something fiercer. Then that's what we'll do. I'll prepare the reports. But Sutton, you need to be certain. Once these go out, there's no taking it back. His family will hate you. Atlanta's business community will choose sides. This will be public and ugly and brutal. Are you ready for that? I look out at Atlanta's skyline, the same view I've had for 12 years from this penthouse that never felt like home. I think about who I was when I married Garrett and who I've become and who I want to be when this is over. Send them, I say. Send all 3. When do the reports go out? I ask Deirdre, still staring at Atlanta's skyline from the penthouse windows. Tomorrow morning, she says. Wednesday at 9 a.m. All 3 simultaneously. I want to give you tonight to prepare yourself. Is there somewhere safe you can go? Someone you can stay with. My sister's place in Decatur. Good. Pack a bag. Leave tonight if you can. Once these reports hit, Garrett's going to realize what happened and I don't know how he'll react. Men like him don't handle exposure well. I pack quickly after we hang up. Clothes, toiletries, important documents, the USB drive with all the photos I took from Garrett's office. I'm almost out the door when I hear his key in the lock. He walks in looking exhausted, tie loosened, jacket over his arm. When he sees me standing there with an overnight bag, his expression shifts from tired to suspicious. Going somewhere? Brains, I say, keeping my voice casual. I need a few days. The baby shower planning is stressing me out. He studies me for a long moment. I can see him calculating, trying to read whether this is normal wife needs space behavior or something else. How long? Just a few days. I'll be back by the weekend. He nods slowly. Hey, call me if you need anything. I walk past him toward the door and for a moment I think about all the things I could say right now. All the accusations I could throw at him. But tomorrow morning, 3 forensic reports will say everything I can't. Garrett. I pause at the door. Yeah. Did you ever actually love me? Or was I always just part of the plan? His face goes carefully blank. That's a strange question. I know. But did you? He looks at me for a long moment and something in his expression tells me the answer before he says anything. I thought you were what I needed at the time, he says finally. A stable wife. The right kind of background. Someone who'd fit into the life I was building. Not I loved you. Not even I thought I loved you. Just, you were what I needed. That's what I thought, I say and walk out. At Bryn's apartment I sleep better than I have in weeks. When I wake up Wednesday morning at 8:30, my phone is already buzzing with a text from Deirdre. Report sent. Let the chips fall. The first call comes at 10:15. An unknown number that I let go to voicemail. Then another. Then a text from a number I don't recognize. This is Marcus Webb, attorney for Garrett Harwick. We need to speak immediately regarding fraudulent allegations. I forward the text to Deirdre without responding. At 11 my phone rings with a call from Callista Reeves, the divorce attorney Deirdre recommended. I answer. Sutton, this is Callista. I just got off the phone with Garrett Harwick's attorney. He's threatening to sue you for defamation and your forensic accountant for fabricating evidence. Can he do that? He can threaten anything he wants. But no, he can't win. Everything in Deirdre's report came from legally obtained records. His own signatures are on the fraudulent documents. His attorney knows that, which is why he's making noise instead of filing actual motions. She pauses. How are you holding up? I'm okay. Good. Because this is about to get very loud. Monroe Harwick's corporate counsel just called me too. Harwick Holdings is convening an emergency board meeting. They're suspending Garrett pending investigation. My stomach flips. Already. They have no choice. If they try to cover this up, they become accessories to fraud. They have to distance the company from Garrett's actions and cooperate with authorities to show they didn't know about it. Her voice softens slightly. This is good news for you, Sutton. It means they're taking the allegations seriously. It means Deirdre's report is ironclad. We talk for another 15 minutes about strategy and next steps. When I hang up, Bryn is standing in her kitchen doorway watching me. It's really happening, I say. Yeah. It really is. The news breaks online first. Atlanta Business Chronicle runs the story at 2 p.m. Harwick Holdings CFO suspended amid fraud investigation. They don't have details yet, but the headline is enough to send shockwaves through Atlanta's business community. My phone explodes. Texts from people I haven't heard from in years. Old colleagues from my event planning days. Women from Eleanor's charity committees. Even my father calls from Florida. The first time I've heard from him in 8 months. I ignore most of them. Answer a few from people who were genuinely kind to me over the years. Let everyone else wonder. At 3:30, Garrett calls from a number I don't have blocked. I answer without thinking. What did you do? His voice is shaking with rage. What the hell did you do, Sutton? I hired a forensic accountant like I said I would. You had no right. I had every right. You've been stealing from me for 12 years. Stealing from your own family's company. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? That report is fabricated. My attorney is going to. Your attorney is going to do nothing because every word in that report is documented fact. Your signatures are on those documents, Garrett. Your accounts received that money. You created those shell companies. My voice is calmer than I feel. You told me I was too weak to leave you. You were wrong. He's silent for a moment. When he speaks again, his voice has changed, less angry, more calculating. Hey, you made your point. You got my attention. Now let's talk settlement. What do you want? We're past settlement, Garrett. I already sent the report to the IRS. Another silence. Longer this time. You what? The IRS Fraud Division received a full copy of the forensic audit this morning. So did Monroe's corporate counsel. So did your attorney. This isn't about divorce settlement anymore. This is about federal crimes. You destroyed me, he says, his voice barely a whisper. You destroyed everything. No, I say. You destroyed everything. I just documented it. I hang up and block that number too. That night, federal agents show up at Harwick Holdings with warrants. Bryn's neighbor who works in the building across the street texts me a photo. 3 people in windbreakers carrying boxes out of the office while security guards watch. The local news picks it up by 6 p.m. All the Atlanta stations lead with the story. Prominent Atlanta real estate family under federal investigation. They still don't name Garrett specifically, but they show footage of Harwick Holdings headquarters, of Monroe and Eleanor's lake house, of the Capital City Club where the family has been members for generations. My phone rings. Eleanor. I almost don't answer, but something makes me pick up. Sutton. Her voice is nothing like I've ever heard from her. Small, uncertain, stripped of all the imperious confidence she's carried for 12 years. Eleanor. There's a long pause. I can hear her breathing on the other end. Did you know, she finally asks, about the fraud? Before you hired the accountant? No. I knew something was wrong. I knew he was hiding money. But I didn't know the scope until Deirdre found it. Another pause. Why? Why what? Why did you send it to the IRS? Why did you send it to Monroe's attorneys? You could have just used it for your divorce. Why destroy the whole family? I think about 12 years of passive-aggressive comments. About being blamed for childlessness I didn't cause. About $3,000 a month while living in a penthouse. About that baby shower invitation handed to me with barely concealed glee. Because Garrett told me I was too weak to leave him, I say. And I needed to prove he was wrong. Eleanor is silent for a long moment. Then she hangs up without another word. 2 days later, the story about Piper breaks. Some journalist connects the dots between Garrett's suspension, the IRS investigation, and corporate documents listing her as partial owner of suspicious shell companies. Her LinkedIn photo appears on the evening news. Young, hopeful, professional. Nothing like someone knowingly involved in fraud. She releases a statement through a criminal defense attorney claiming she was manipulated into signing documents she didn't understand. My client trusted her supervisor when he presented routine paperwork for signature. She had no knowledge of fraudulent activity and is cooperating fully with investigators. I watch the news coverage from Bryn's couch and feel something complicated twist in my chest. Is she telling the truth? Was she another victim of Garrett's manipulation? Or is she lying to save herself? I don't know. Maybe I'll never know. But either way, she's facing years of legal battles to clear her name. Her face is now associated with fraud and embezzlement. The baby she's carrying, the one Eleanor was so excited about, has become evidence of Garrett's character and judgment rather than a celebrated addition to the Harwick legacy. Meanwhile, Trent moves with impressive speed to position himself as the responsible Harwick son. He gives a statement to the Atlanta Business Chronicle expressing shock and disappointment at his brother's actions, emphasizing his own commitment to ethical business practices and transparency. Within a week, the board appoints him interim CFO. I watch him on the news accepting the position, standing in front of Harwick Holdings headquarters, wearing a suit similar to the ones Garrett used to wear, speaking with the same confident authority. He stepped into his brother's role over the smoking ruins of Garrett's reputation, and something about it feels both inevitable and opportunistic. Did he suspect? Did he know something was wrong but wait for the right moment to let it implode? Or is he genuinely shocked and simply taking advantage of circumstances? I'll probably never know that either. But watching him claim the position Garrett spent decades grooming himself for, I realize the Harwick family empire will survive this. It'll survive because they're cutting Garrett loose completely, distancing themselves from his crimes, cooperating with investigators to prove they didn't know. Monroe issues a statement through corporate counsel emphasizing that the board had no knowledge of the CFO's fraudulent activities and is conducting a full internal audit. Eleanor stops appearing at her country club lunches and charity galas. The woman who ruled Atlanta's social scene for decades suddenly nowhere to be seen. And Garrett? Garrett is out on bail, living somewhere he won't tell anyone, facing federal charges that could send him to prison for 15 to 20 years if convicted. 3 weeks after the reports went out, I'm still at Bryn's apartment when Deirdre calls with an update. Garrett's attorney is pushing for a plea deal, she says. Federal prosecutors are offering reduced charges in exchange for testimony about the offshore banking structures he used. He's looking at 8 to 10 years instead of 20. Will he take it? Probably. The evidence is overwhelming. Going to trial would just be expensive and pointless. I hang up and stand at Bryn's window looking out at normal Decatur streets. Normal people living normal lives. No penthouses. No fraud investigations. No federal agents. Just normal. And for the first time in 12 years I think I might be able to have that too. Normal doesn't come as easily as I'd hoped. Standing at Bryn's window imagining a simple life is one thing. Actually building it while my husband faces federal charges and Atlanta's business community chooses sides is something else entirely. Callista Reeves calls me 3 days after my conversation with Deirdre about Garrett's plea deal. We need to meet, she says. The divorce filing needs to happen now, while Garrett's scrambling to deal with criminal charges. Strike while he's weak. Her Midtown office is modest compared to the glass tower law firms the Harwicks use. Functional furniture, framed diplomas on the walls. A view of Atlanta that's street level rather than penthouse height. Callista herself is in her early 50s, dark hair pulled back severely, wearing a suit that's professional without being expensive. She has a reputation in Atlanta family law circles for destroying wealthy husbands who thought they were untouchable. Let me see the prenup, she says before I've even sat down. I pull out the document I signed 12 years ago. 17 pages of legal language I was too in love and too intimidated to properly review. She reads through it in silence, occasionally making notes on a legal pad. This is garbage, she says finally, tapping the document with her pen. Or it will be once I'm done with it. Financial fraud, systematic asset hiding, marital waste. Any judge with half a brain will see this prenup was signed under false pretenses and should be voided entirely. Can you actually void it? Maybe. Maybe not. But even if the prenup stands technically, we can demonstrate your husband systematically defrauded you throughout the marriage, which entitles you to far more than these limitations. She flips to a specific page. See this clause. In the event of divorce, the non-Harwick spouse receives $75,000 settlement plus any personal property brought into the marriage. That's insulting even without the fraud component. His family's lawyers wrote it. Of course they did. They wrote it to protect Harwick assets in case the marriage failed. What they didn't account for was their golden boy being a criminal. She closes the document. Here's our strategy. We file for divorce immediately, today if possible. We demand temporary support since you have no income and Garrett systematically isolated you financially. We subpoena every financial record, using Deirdre's forensic report as foundation for asset discovery. And we argue you're entitled to half of all marital assets including those he fraudulently hid, plus damages for financial abuse. How much are we talking about? Based on Deirdre's findings? You're entitled to at least $4.2 million. That's half of the $7.3 million he hid from you, plus additional damages. We'll also demand the penthouse, though it's probably in foreclosure given his unpaid refinancing debts. The number makes my head spin. $4.2 million. More money than I've ever imagined having. He's going to fight this, Callista continues. Men like Garrett don't accept defeat gracefully. He'll claim the forensic report is fabricated. That you're lying about financial abuse. That the prenup protects him. His attorneys will be expensive and aggressive. I don't care, I say. I'm done protecting him from consequences. Callista smiles, sharp and satisfied. Good. That's exactly the attitude we need. We file the divorce papers that afternoon. Garrett gets served 2 days later at an apartment in Marietta where he's apparently living now, having been forced out of the penthouse by IRS asset seizures. His response comes fast. His attorney, a man named Marcus Webb from one of Atlanta's most expensive firms, files motions claiming the forensic report is inadmissible. That Deirdre obtained information illegally. That I violated Garrett's privacy by accessing his files without permission. Our first court hearing happens on a gray Tuesday morning in Fulton County. I sit in the gallery with Bryn beside me while Callista argues at the front of the courtroom. Garrett sits at the defendant's table with Marcus Webb and I barely recognize him. Gone are the expensive suits and confident posture. He's wearing something off the rack that doesn't fit quite right and he looks smaller somehow, diminished in a way that has nothing to do with physical size. Your Honor, Marcus Webb says, standing to address the judge. My client's wife has manufactured evidence in an attempt to destroy him during divorce proceedings. The so-called forensic report was obtained through illegal access to private files. Objection, Callista interrupts. Every document in that forensic report came from legally accessible marital records. Mrs. Harwick had every right to access joint financial documents. If Mr. Harwick wanted certain files to remain private, he shouldn't have committed fraud with them. The judge, a woman in her 60s named Patricia Hendricks, looks unimpressed with Webb's arguments. Counselor, I've reviewed the forensic report. Unless you're claiming Mrs. Harwick forged your client's signatures on dozens of corporate documents, I don't see how this evidence is inadmissible. We're not claiming forgery, Your Honor, but... Then these are your client's signatures on fraudulent documents? Webb hesitates. Garrett leans over and whispers something to him. Webb nods and continues. My client maintains he was engaged in legitimate business transactions that his wife has mischaracterized. Legitimate business transactions, Judge Hendricks interrupts, flipping through papers on her bench. That involved shell companies registered to vacant lots? Vendors that don't exist? Real estate deals with inflated appraisals? Mr. Webb, I've been on this bench for 23 years. I know what fraud looks like. Garrett stands suddenly against Webb's obvious wishes. She's lying, Your Honor. My wife is angry about personal matters and has manufactured evidence to destroy me. Judge Hendricks looks at him over her reading glasses. Mr. Harwick, your attorney didn't ask you to speak. Sit down. But I need to explain. Sit down. He sits. Webb looks like he wants to disappear. Here's what I see, Judge Hendricks continues. I see a forensic report compiled by a licensed accountant with an impeccable reputation. I see documentation of systematic financial fraud spanning 8 years. I see a prenuptial agreement that may or may not be enforceable given the circumstances. What I don't see is any credible defense from your side beyond claiming Mrs. Harwick is vindictive. She looks at Callista. Mrs. Reeves, your client's petition for temporary support is granted. Mr. Harwick will pay $8,000 monthly until final settlement. Asset discovery will proceed using the forensic report as foundation. We'll reconvene in 6 weeks for settlement negotiations. Walking out of that courtroom, I feel something shift inside me. For 12 years, Garrett controlled everything. The money, the narrative, the power dynamics. Now a judge just granted me temporary support and validated Deirdre's findings in open court. That went well, Callista says as we stand in the hallway. Hendricks is no nonsense. She saw right through Webb's deflection tactics. What happens now? Now we wait. Garrett's attorneys will try to negotiate settlement before the next hearing. They'll want to avoid trial because discovery in a public trial would be devastating. Every financial crime documented. Every asset he tried to hide exposed. The criminal prosecutors would love that additional evidence. He's right. 2 weeks later, Webb calls Callista proposing mediation. They meet at a neutral law office in Buckhead with both clients present. I sit across a conference table from Garrett for the first time since I walked out of the penthouse, and he won't meet my eyes. My client is prepared to offer $500,000 as full settlement, Webb begins. Plus Mrs. Harwick can keep any personal property she brought into the marriage. We believe this is more than generous given the prenuptial agreement. Callista actually laughs. Your client systematically defrauded my client for 12 years. He hid $7.3 million in marital assets. He isolated her financially, destroyed her earning capacity, blamed her publicly for childlessness he caused through secret medical procedures, then paraded his pregnant mistress through family events. And you think $500,000 is generous? The prenup limits. The prenup is unenforceable. It was signed under false pretenses. But let's pretend for a moment it's valid. Your client still committed marital waste and financial abuse that voids those limitations. Callista slides a document across the table. Our demand, $4.2 million in cash, the penthouse property and guaranteed payment before any criminal fines or restitution to Harwick Holdings. Webb looks at the paper like it physically hurts him. That's completely unreasonable. What's unreasonable is your client stealing millions while giving my client $3,000 a month to live on. What's unreasonable is systematic financial abuse disguised as marriage. Callista leans forward. But here's the thing, Mr. Webb. We don't actually need to settle. We're happy to go to trial. Discovery will be extensive and public. Every detail of your client's fraud entered into court record. Every asset he tried to hide exposed. The federal prosecutors will thank us for the additional evidence. Garrett finally speaks, his voice hoarse. I don't have $4.2 million in accessible funds. The IRS seized most of my accounts. That's not my client's problem, Callista says. You should have thought about that before committing federal crimes. Sell assets. Liquidate investments. Figure it out. But my client gets paid first. Before the IRS, before Harwick Holdings restitution, before your legal fees. That's non-negotiable. The mediation ends without resolution. We try again 2 weeks later. Then again. Each time Webb's offers increase incrementally while Callista holds firm. Finally, 6 weeks after the first hearing, Webb calls with capitulation in his voice. We'll agree to $4.2 million, the penthouse and priority payment. But this has to close quickly. The criminal case is moving toward trial and Mr. Harwick needs to focus on that defense. We can close in 2 weeks, Callista says. Assuming payment clears. It does. On a Friday afternoon in late spring, I sit in Callista's office and sign the settlement agreement. 12 years of marriage reduced to signatures on legal documents. But those signatures come with a wire transfer confirmation showing $4.2 million deposited into an account in my name only. How do you feel? Callista asks when it's done. I think about that question. I should feel triumphant maybe. Vindicated. Instead I mostly feel tired and sad and relieved in equal measure. I feel free, I say finally. Good, Callista replies. Because you are. Freedom, it turns out, is more complicated than signing settlement papers and receiving a wire transfer. I'm legally free from Garrett, financially secure for the first time in my adult life. But Atlanta still feels like a city where everyone's watching and waiting to see what I'll do next. The federal prosecutors move forward 3 months after the divorce settles. Garrett is formally indicted on 17 counts. Wire fraud, tax evasion, embezzlement, money laundering, making false statements to financial institutions. The indictment document is 23 pages long. Deirdre emails me a copy, and I read through charges that carry maximum sentences totaling more than 40 years if served consecutively. The arraignment happens on a humid August morning. I don't attend. I'm done sitting in courtrooms watching Garrett's life disintegrate. But the news coverage is impossible to avoid. Every Atlanta station leads with the same image. Garrett in handcuffs being led into the federal courthouse, wearing a jacket that doesn't fit right, his expression somewhere between disbelief and resignation. The man who used to move through Atlanta's business world with absolute confidence now looks diminished in ways that have nothing to do with physical size. He's lost weight. His hair is grayer. He looks older than 45. Bryn texts me updates throughout the day even though I haven't asked for them. Pleaded not guilty. Bail set at $500,000. Family posted it. That last part surprises me. After everything, after the fraud, the embezzlement, the public humiliation, Monroe and Eleanor are still protecting him. Still believing their son deserves one more chance to make this right. Or maybe they're just protecting the Harwick name. Keeping Garrett out of jail long enough to negotiate a plea deal that might reduce the public spectacle. 2 weeks later, that protection evaporates. Monroe and Eleanor release a statement through their attorney that gets picked up by every business publication in Georgia. While we love our son, we cannot support actions that have damaged our family's company and reputation. Garrett Harwick's defense is his own responsibility. Harwick Holdings will not fund his legal representation. It's brutal in its calculation. They're cutting him loose completely, distancing the family from his crimes, demonstrating to prosecutors and the public that they're not covering up for a criminal, preserving whatever remains of the Harwick legacy. But it also means Garrett faces 17 federal counts with whatever legal defense he can afford from his own rapidly diminishing assets. Most of his accessible money went to my settlement. The IRS seized other accounts pending restitution calculations. What's left isn't enough to retain the kind of high-powered criminal defense team that might actually help him. I'm having coffee with Maya at a place in Virginia Highland when the statement breaks. She shows me the article on her phone and I read it twice trying to process what it means. They actually did it, Maya says. They threw him under the bus. Can you blame them? He stole almost $13 million from their company. No, I get it. But it's still brutal. That's his parents essentially saying he's on his own. She pauses. How do you feel about it? I think about that question longer than I should need to. I don't know. Part of me thinks he deserves it. Part of me just feels sad. For all of it. The whole situation. That's more generous than he deserves. Maybe. But watching someone's entire life collapse, even someone who systematically abused you for 12 years, doesn't feel as satisfying as I thought it would. Eleanor never calls me again after that statement. I hear through various channels that she's essentially disappeared from Atlanta social life. No country club lunches. No charity galas. No committee meetings where wealthy women plan events while drinking wine at 2 in the afternoon. The woman who ruled those circles for decades is suddenly nowhere to be seen, too humiliated to face the whispers and judgment from women who were her friends when the Harwick name meant something impressive rather than scandalous. Monroe has a minor stroke in September. Nothing life-threatening but serious enough that he steps back from active leadership of Harwick Holdings. Trent takes over fully, no longer interim but actual CFO, stepping into the role his brother spent decades preparing for and destroying in less than a year. The irony isn't lost on anyone in Atlanta's business community. October brings news I'm not expecting. Piper gives birth to a daughter on a Tuesday afternoon. I'm at a coffee shop in Midtown when Bryn calls. Did you see? She asks without preamble. See what? Piper had the baby. It's on the news. I pull up the Atlanta Journal-Constitution on my phone. The article is brief, just a few paragraphs noting that Piper Caldwell, the assistant connected to the Harwick Holdings fraud investigation, gave birth to a daughter. The accompanying photo shows her leaving the hospital alone, carrying a car seat, looking exhausted and overwhelmed and impossibly young. No Garrett at the hospital, he was in court that day for pretrial motions. No Eleanor showing up with flowers and grandmotherly pride. No Harwick family members welcoming the baby who was supposed to be a celebration 6 months ago at that intervention in my penthouse. Piper's attorney releases yet another statement emphasizing she's not romantically involved with Garrett and is raising her daughter independently. Whether that's choice or necessity, the article doesn't say. I stare at that photo for a long time. This girl, and she looks like a girl in that picture, not a woman, is now a single mother with a newborn, potential criminal charges hanging over her, her name permanently linked to fraud and embezzlement, her child's father facing prison. You still there? Bryn asks. Yeah. I'm here. How do you feel? I don't know. Sad for the baby, I guess. She didn't ask for any of this. Neither did you. True. But I'm 41 with a $4.2 million settlement and the skills to rebuild my life. That baby is being raised by a 26-year-old whose career prospects just got destroyed and whose child support will come from a man in federal prison. Maya calls me later that week. I saw Piper at a support group for single mothers, she says. She looks completely lost. Like she still can't process what happened to her life. Is she okay? Define okay. She's functioning. Taking care of the baby. But she looks like she's aged 10 years and 6 months. After we hang up, I sit in my new townhouse. Modest but comfortable furniture I actually chose, walls I painted colors I like, and think about the different ways Garrett destroyed people. Me through systematic financial abuse and psychological manipulation. Piper through whatever combination of seduction and exploitation got her pregnant and signing corporate documents she may or may not have understood. His own family through embezzlement that damaged their company and reputation. And now a baby who'll grow up knowing her father went to prison for fraud. By December, Garrett's attorneys are negotiating a plea deal. Deirdre keeps me updated even though I don't ask. She seems to take professional satisfaction in tracking the case to its conclusion. Prosecutors offered a deal, she tells me over the phone one afternoon. Plead guilty to reduce charges, testify about the offshore banking structures, cooperate in recovering hidden assets. 8 to 10 years instead of 40. Will he take it? He'd be stupid not to. The evidence is overwhelming. Going to trial would just be expensive and pointless. His attorneys are advising him to take the deal. When does he have to decide? End of year. If he doesn't accept by then, trial date is set for January. 8 to 10 years. I try to imagine Garrett in federal prison for a decade. Try to picture him at 55, released into a world where the Harwick name is ruined and his professional reputation is destroyed. Where does someone go after that? What kind of life exists on the other side of that much public failure? You okay? Deirdre asks when I'm quiet too long. Just processing. This is what you wanted, Sutton. Justice. Consequences. Him facing the reality of what he did. I know. It's a lot. It is. But remember, he chose this. Every fraudulent transaction. Every lie. Every dollar he stole. Those were all choices he made. You just documented them. He's right. I know she's right. But knowing someone deserves consequences doesn't make watching those consequences play out feel simple or clean or satisfying. The week before Christmas, news breaks that Garrett accepted the plea deal. 8 years in federal prison. Restitution to Harwick Holdings. Cooperation with ongoing investigations. Sentencing scheduled for February. I'm wrapping presents at my kitchen table when Bryn texts me the article. I read it twice, set my phone down and go back to wrapping a scarf I bought for my sister. My phone rings. Unknown number. I almost don't answer, but something makes me pick up. Sutton. Garrett's voice. I haven't heard it in months. I wanted you to know I took the plea deal. 8 years. It's done. I don't know what to say. Don't know why he's calling me. I know you hate me, he continues when I don't respond. I know you have every right to. But I need you to understand something. I never meant for it to get this out of control. It started small and just spiraled. And by the time I realized how bad it was, I was in too deep. Garrett. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just needed to say it. That I'm sorry. For all of it. The vasectomy. The financial control. Piper. Everything. The apology lands hollow and too late. Hey, I say. That's it? Just okay. What do you want me to say? That I forgive you? That 8 years is too harsh? I don't know what you're looking for here. He's quiet for a long moment. I guess I don't either. You were right. You were too strong for me. I thought I could control you forever, but you destroyed me instead. You destroyed yourself, Garrett. I just refused to go down with you. He hangs up without saying goodbye. I sit at my kitchen table with half-wrapped presents and my phone silent in my hand, and I realize that conversation was probably the last one we'll ever have. The last words between us before he disappears into federal prison for 8 years while I build a life that's finally, completely mine. It doesn't feel triumphant. It doesn't feel satisfying. It feels finished. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's enough. The thought stays with me as I finish wrapping presents at my kitchen table, as I clean up the paper scraps and ribbons, as I pour myself a glass of wine and sit by the window watching December darkness settle over Midtown. Finished. That's what Garrett's phone call gave me. Not closure exactly, but a sense that the story between us has reached its final page. He'll disappear into federal prison for 8 years. I'll build a life he'll never be part of. And maybe that's enough. The townhouse I bought with settlement money is nothing like the Buckhead penthouse. 2 bedrooms instead of 4. Hardwood floors instead of marble. Windows that look out at Freedom Park and normal Atlanta streets rather than the skyline from 40 floors up. But it's mine in ways that penthouse never was. I spent weeks painting walls colors I actually liked. Soft blue in the bedroom, warm gray in the living room, pale yellow in the kitchen that catches morning light. I bought furniture from actual stores instead of having Eleanor's interior designer select everything. The couch is comfortable rather than expensive. The coffee table cost $200 instead of $8,000. The art on my walls is from local artists whose work I saw at festivals. not abstract pieces purchased to impress dinner guests. Bryn helped me move in back in October, the two of us carrying boxes upstairs while she made jokes about how much lighter I seemed without Garrett's emotional baggage weighing me down. She wasn't wrong. "How does it feel?" she'd asked that first night, sitting on my new couch eating pizza from paper plates because I hadn't unpacked the dishes yet. "Like breathing for the first time in 12 years, I'd said. And I meant it. Now it's late December and I've been living here for 2 months. Learning the rhythms of my neighborhood. Finding the best coffee shop 3 blocks away. Discovering the walking trail around Freedom Park. Building a life that's smaller and simpler and infinitely better than anything I had before." Maya calls on a Sunday afternoon the week after Garrett's plea deal makes the news. "How are you holding up?" "I'm okay. Actually okay, not just saying it." "Good. Because I have something to ask you." She pauses. "Remember how I mentioned needing help with that corporate holiday party? The one that's making you insane?" "That's the one. It's for a tech company in Buckhead. 200 guests, full catering, live entertainment, the works. And I'm drowning in logistics. I could really use someone who knows what they're doing." The idea terrifies and excites me in equal measure. I haven't worked in event planning in over a decade. Haven't coordinated anything more complicated than my own dinner parties for Garrett's business associates. Haven't used those skills professionally since before I got married. I don't know, Maya. It's been so long. Which is why it's part-time to start. Help me with this one event. If it goes well, we'll talk about the next one. No pressure. Part-time. One event. I can do that. Hey, I say. When do we start? Tomorrow morning. My office. 9 a.m. Bring coffee and prepare to make 1,000 decisions about centerpieces. The work is harder than I remembered and more satisfying than I'd hoped. Maya's office is a small space in Virginia Highland. 2 rooms, a bathroom, a closet full of samples and supplies. We spend hours on the phone with vendors, reviewing floor plans, negotiating contracts, solving problems as they arise. I'd forgotten how much I loved this. The puzzle of fitting all the pieces together. The satisfaction when a difficult vendor finally agrees to our terms. The creative challenge of making something beautiful within budget constraints. The holiday party happens on a Friday night in mid-December. 200 guests in a Buckhead hotel ballroom that took us 3 days to transform into a winter wonderland. Ice sculptures. String quartet. Catered menu that took weeks to finalize. I wear a simple black dress and comfortable heels, moving through the event, checking details, solving problems, making sure everything runs smoothly. "You're good at this," Maya says during a quiet moment near the end of the night. "Like you never stopped. It feels good to be useful again." "You were always useful, Sutton. You just spent 12 years being useful to the wrong person." The client is thrilled. Sends Maya an email the next morning praising every detail. Asks if we're available for their spring investor meeting. "What do you think?" Maya asks when she forwards me the email. "Want to make this a regular thing?" I think about my settlement money sitting safely invested. About the fact that I don't need to work for financial reasons. But I also think about how purposeful I felt at that party, how alive, how much like myself in ways I haven't felt since before I married Garrett. "Yes," I say. "I want to make this a regular thing." Christmas week brings unexpected snow to Atlanta, rare and brief, but enough to blanket the city in quiet white for a few hours. I'm making coffee in my kitchen when Bryn texts, "Look outside." The park across from my townhouse is transformed. Families building snowmen. Dogs running through drifts. Kids having snowball fights. Normal life happening in ways that feel miraculous after everything. Bryn comes over that afternoon and we sit by my window watching the snow with mugs of hot chocolate like we're kids again. "You seem different," she observes. "Lighter." I feel lighter. Good different or scary different? Both maybe. Good mostly. I pause. "I got a call from Shauna last week. Trent's wife." Bryn raises her eyebrows. What did she want? To apologize. For not saying anything when she knew something was wrong in my marriage. We talked for almost an hour about the family dynamics, about how toxic everything was. And it was actually helpful. To hear someone else name what I experienced. To know I wasn't imagining it. We're quiet for a moment watching snow fall. "Are you going to his sentencing?" Bryn asks. "Garrett's." "No. I don't need to see that. It's done." "How do you feel about it?" The plea deal. 8 years. I think about that question for a long time. I feel like he chose this. Every fraudulent transaction. Every lie. Every dollar he stole. Those were choices he made. I just documented them. But it's still a lot. A decade of someone's life. His career over. His family fractured. All of it. He was going to do the same thing to you, Bryn reminds me gently. Destroy your life and walk away. You just refuse to let that happen. He's right. I know she's right. But knowing someone deserves consequences doesn't make watching those consequences play out feel simple. New Year's Eve, Maya invites me to a small party at her place. Just a few people. Former colleagues from our event planning days, some of her current business contacts. Friends who've known me since before I became Sutton Harwick and lost myself in that identity. I almost don't go. The idea of being social, of explaining my situation to people who've heard the news, feels exhausting. But Maya insists. You can't hide in your townhouse forever, she says. You've spent enough years hiding. So I go. Wear a dress I bought myself. Drive to her apartment in Decatur. Walk into a room full of people who greet me with genuine warmth rather than the careful politeness I experienced in Eleanor's world. Sutton. Someone I used to work with pulls me into a hug. We've been following everything in the news. Are you okay? I'm getting there. We talk about event planning, about life changes, about Atlanta's business scene. No one asks invasive questions about the divorce or the fraud. They just treat me like a person, not a scandal. At midnight we count down together and toast the new year. Standing on Maya's balcony with a glass of champagne, watching fireworks over Atlanta, I realize this is the first New Year's in 13 years that I'm not standing beside Garrett at some formal event, playing the role of the perfect wife. This year I'm just myself. And that feels revolutionary. February comes before I'm ready. Garrett's sentencing is scheduled for the first week. I don't attend, but Deirdre calls me afterward with the details. 8 years federal prison. Restitution to Harwick Holdings. 5 years supervised release after that. It's done. How did he look? Resigned. Like he'd accepted it finally. She pauses. How are you doing? I'm good. Actually good. That's what I like to hear. After we hang up, I sit in my townhouse. My space, my furniture, my life. And process what that sentencing means. Garrett will be 53 when he's released. His career destroyed. His family fractured. His reputation permanently damaged. And I'll be 49. With a business I'm building with Maya. With financial security. With a life that's entirely, completely, undeniably mine. The revenge I orchestrated wasn't loud or dramatic. It was 2 words, not yet, followed by one strategic hire who followed the money and found the truth. But those 2 words dismantled an empire. Sent a man who thought himself untouchable to federal prison. Freed me from 12 years of systematic abuse disguised as marriage. Sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't confrontation or scandal. Sometimes it's simply refusing to be the fool they need you to be. Sometimes justice is hiring the right professional to examine the numbers and letting those numbers tell the story your husband spent years hiding. Sometimes freedom is saying not yet when everyone expects you to accept what you don't deserve, and having the courage to follow through no matter the cost. Garrett was right about one thing. I was too weak to leave him. But I was strong enough to destroy him instead. And now, sitting in my townhouse on a February evening with event contracts on my coffee table and my sister arriving soon for dinner, I realize I've become strong enough to build something better than I ever imagined during those penthouse years. Not just revenge. Not just justice. But a life that's finally, completely, undeniably mine. And that, I decide, pouring wine and checking the lasagna in my oven, is more than enough. It's everything. If this story of strategic justice had you holding your breath, hit that like button right now. My favorite part was when Sutton said, "Not yet," and watched Garrett's smirk finally crack. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more empowering stories like this. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.